Mark weighed 310 pounds, and he and Sarah had recently lost a couple of friends to heart attacks. Concerned about Mark's health, Sarah decided to cut off intimacy, allowing it only 4 times a year unless he met specific weight loss goals. The 4 occasions were New Year's Eve, their anniversary, and both of their birthdays. Over a span of 2 years, Mark managed to lose a significant amount of weight, getting down to around 195 pounds. He endured the deprivation, knowing that reaching these goals would lead to more intimate moments. However, when Mark expressed his desire to stop the diet after losing 115 pounds, Sarah refused. That's when she made a threat that shook the very foundation of their marriage. "If you quit, you'll only get sex 4 times a year. But I have needs, Mark. So, if you quit, he'll have to get those needs taken care of elsewhere." The moment Sarah uttered those words, she saw the shock in Mark's eyes. The sadness on his face quickly morphed into anger and disgust, emotions that shattered the foundation of their relationship. Sarah realized she had made a grave mistake by pushing the man she loved to the brink, demanding he fulfill her desires and threatening to seek satisfaction elsewhere if he didn't. Mark was livid. "I busted my ass for 2 years to lose over 100 pounds to please you, Sarah. It's been incredibly tough, and you used intimacy as a tool to keep me going. I did it all because I love you and wanted to make you happy. And now, when I say I can't do it anymore, you tell me you'll keep cutting me off and even cheat on me to get your needs met. You may not realize it, Sarah, but you've just destroyed our marriage. You've planted a seed of doubt, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you again. How do I know you haven't been cheating on me this whole time? Damn it, Sarah. I don't know what to believe anymore. Mark, I didn't mean it. I would never cheat on you. I swear," Sarah pleaded. Mark looked at her with cold eyes. "How am I supposed to believe anything you say now? You seemed pretty serious just a minute ago." Mark stood up from the kitchen table and walked out the back door, heading to the garage. "I need some time to think." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she realized the gravity of what she had done. She had been so proud of Mark for his accomplishments, but her greed had driven her to demand more, pushing him to a breaking point. Now, she feared she had lost him forever. Mark spent the next hour in the garage, keeping his hands busy while he thought things through. He didn't really believe Sarah had been unfaithful, but after her threat, he couldn't be sure anymore. Earlier that day, he would have sworn she was faithful, but now doubt clouded his mind. "I need to find out," he muttered to himself, returning to the house. Mark found Sarah still sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes red from crying. He felt a pang of guilt, but knew he had to stay firm in his resolve. "Sarah, hey Race. What's going to happen? I'm done with the diet. You don't need to worry about cutting me off from intimacy because I'm cutting you off. We can have sex the same 4 times a year you dictated before, or not at all. I don't care. But if you ever cheat on me, you'll make sure the guy regrets it. And as for you, if you betray me, you'll be out on the streets so fast you won't know what hit you. You'll be a free woman to get your needs met wherever you want, but you won't be my wife anymore. And don't think I won't be watching your every move from now on. I don't trust you, Sarah, and you'd better be very careful in everything you do. You won't be able to hide it from me if you cheat. And going out for a while, I won't be home for lunch, but it'll be here for dinner. If you don't feel like cooking, we can order pizza or take out." Mark grabbed his car keys and walked out the back door. Moments later, Sarah heard the garage door open and Mark's car drive away. "Oh my God, what have I done?" Sarah whispered to herself, bursting into tears again. She sat there crying, wishing she had kept her mouth shut. After an hour or so, she got up, went to the bathroom, and then lay on the bed crying some more. When Mark returned home later that afternoon, he found her still in the same position. Like many husbands who suspect their wives of cheating, Mark decided to do some investigating on his own. He thought the easiest way to start would be by checking the phone records from their home phone and Sarah's cell phone, since both were in his name. He knew he wouldn't have any trouble getting the reports. The landline company offered to send him the call logs electronically, and they uploaded 3 years' worth of data onto a CD for a small fee. Mark gladly paid it and left the office with everything he needed. He requested similar data from the cell phone company, which initially hesitated since it was Sarah's phone number, but Mark pointed out that it was a joint account in his name, so they had no reason to withhold the information. They provided the data electronically for a fee, which Mark found excessive but worth the money to access the information easily. When Mark returned home around 4 p.m., he saw Sarah lying on their bed asleep. Deciding to let her rest, he went to their home office, locked the door to avoid interruptions, and began downloading the data from the CDs. He had already formulated a plan on how to conduct his search. He started with the 2 years ago when he began the diet and Sarah restricted their intimacy. That would have been October 2012. Mark sorted the call data by phone number, dates, times, and durations. It took him about an hour and a half to create a comprehensive list of every call made from their home phone in the last 2 years. Just as he was about to start the same process with Sarah's cell phone data, he heard the doorknob rattle. The door was locked, so no one could enter. Mark saved everything he was working on, stashed away all evidence of his investigation, and logged off the computer. When he opened the door, he found Sarah standing there looking disheveled, her eyes and nose red from crying. "Mark, I'm so sorry for what I've done to you. I know I hurt you, and I was selfish and cruel. Please forgive me," she said. "I know you work so hard on your diet, and it was never my place to decide whether you should continue. It was your choice. I just got carried away with the power I thought I had. Please, Mark, please forgive me." Mark replied, "Sarah, I forgive you, for now, because I don't know anything more. I love you, and I lost all that weight for you. I struggled for 2 years and sacrificed so much, including intimacy, all for you. But I just couldn't do it anymore. Unfortunately, you've created a situation where I have to know if you've been faithful. If I don't find out, it will drive me crazy. So, if you haven't cheated on me in the past and don't in the future, we should be okay. But I have to know. You're going to have to deal with that because I didn't create this mess. You did with your threat. I can't believe you didn't consider how your words would affect me or damage my trust in you." Sarah had hoped Mark would just forgive her and move on, but that wasn't going to happen. She knew she deserved everything that was happening, but she still wished it would all go away. Nodding slowly in resigned agreement, she turned and walked back to the bedroom, closing the door behind her. She lay on the bed again, not sobbing, but with tears streaming down her face. Mark opened the bedroom door and asked, "Sarah, do you want something to eat?" "No, Mark, I'm not hungry," Sarah replied. Mark walked out to his car and drove to a nearby place called Riverdale, where he and Sarah had often gone for drinks. Their food was excellent, and Mark decided to indulge in a few beers and a greasy but delicious bacon cheeseburger. In the 2 years prior, he hadn't had more than 2 beers in a week or a single bacon cheeseburger, but tonight he was going to treat himself, even though his heart was breaking. It hurt to see Sarah in such a state, but it hurt even more knowing the doubt she had planted in his mind. When Mark returned home, he went back to the office to continue working on Sarah's cell phone call logs, because he already knew the process. It took him half the time to complete the list. After reviewing the 2 lists, Mark found that over the course of 2 years, there were 34,882 calls made to 45 different phone numbers. He sorted the calls by number and found some surprising results. There were almost 300 calls to his own cell phone, about 200 to his parents' number, and a similar amount to Sarah's parents' number. There were also a good number of calls to each of Sarah's sisters, and about half that number to his brother Mike. In addition, there were scattered calls to various friends whose numbers Mark recognized, and a few to numbers he didn't. But what really caught his attention were the over 200 calls to a number he didn't recognize and another 50-plus calls to a second unfamiliar number. Then he noticed more than 30 calls to additional numbers over the course of 2 years. He assumed those might be hair salon stores or church contacts, which didn't bother him much. However, he made a note of them and returned to the 2 major unrecognized numbers. Being the methodical person he was, Mark decided to refine his research. He sorted the calls by day and time for those 2 numbers. The results sent a chill down his spine and sparked a burning anger. Every Wednesday at 11 a.m., Mark had a staff meeting at a local restaurant with his boss and other department heads. The meeting lasted an hour, followed by a 1-hour lunch break, and then they wrapped up their business by 2:30 or 3 p.m., without fail. There was a call to Mark's cell phone at 10:55 a.m. every Wednesday he worked. Yes, some weeks were missed, but those were when he was on vacation. At 11:05 a.m. every Wednesday, there was a call made to the first unfamiliar number. The pattern was too consistent to ignore. Mark then looked at the second number and quickly realized that those calls were all placed on Fridays at 1:05 p.m. One Friday a month, Mark played golf with his brother and their best friends. They played 18 holes, finishing around 5:30 p.m., and then stopped at the clubhouse for a couple of drinks before heading home. Mark was almost always home by 6:30 p.m. on those Fridays, at which point he would shower and take Sarah out to dinner. But what angered him was that Sarah always called him just before he teed off to tell him she loved him and would be waiting for him when he got home. Now Mark knew what was really going on, but he still didn't have visual proof or know with whom she was cheating. He wondered how long it had been going on and if it had started when Sarah cut him off, or even earlier. So he went back another year and discovered the same calls had been made monthly for the 3 months before he was cut off. Whatever Sarah was doing, she had started 3 months earlier, but not as frequently. Now all Mark had to do was figure out who it was and decide what to do about it. Finding out who was surprisingly easy. Mark ran a reverse lookup on the first number and discovered it was an unlisted cell phone number. The second number was listed to a Jason Miles. Of course, Mark knew exactly who Jason Miles was, his trainer at the gym. Sarah had found Jason for Mark in the first place, so Sarah had been calling Jason on the Fridays when Mark played golf. Mark noted the address in his call log spreadsheet and decided to go out again for a while. Returning to Riverdale, Mark had a couple more beers when things quieted down after the dinner rush. Mark asked the rather attractive bartender, Brenda, if she could do him a favor. He explained a bit about what had happened and told her he just wanted to find out if the first number belonged to Jason. He asked her to call the number and pretend to be a potential client, just to see if it was him. Brenda took the phone. "Hi, is this Jason?" she asked. "Oh, my name is Jennifer." "Yes, someone gave me your number as a potential trainer." "No, I didn't know her, but we were talking about getting in better shape, and she recommended you." She laughed. "Yes, I'm 24, 5 feet 6 inches and a bit on the chunky side, around 130 pounds. I could tone up and be happier at 115 or so. Do you have any openings?" "Oh, I see one of your clients just quit, so you have an opening. Great, he'll stop by the gym to see you in a few days." "Thanks, Jason." Mark sat there, amazed at what Brenda had done. She confirmed it was Jason from the gym and that he was hitting on women he trained. She even found out he had an opening because of a recent dropout, probably Mark. Damn, Mark thought. Sarah already called Jason to warn him to be careful. But what really struck Mark was Brenda's sense of humor. He didn't care how much she actually weighed. She was hot, just as she was. Mark smiled at her and said, "You're too funny, Brenda. I think you're perfect just the way you are. So stay away from Jason. No one could have a more perfect body than you do." Brenda flashed him a beautiful smile. "Thank you, Mark. Your flattery makes me blush. Honestly, I can't understand why your wife would look elsewhere. Any girl would be lucky to have you as a friend and lover." Mark smiled back. "Well, Brenda, 2 years ago, I wasn't the hunk you see now, but that doesn't justify what Sarah did. I think I've never felt this low in my life, but I'm certain it will only get worse." Sarah stirred slightly when he got into bed and said, "I love you, Mark." Mark grunted in response and turned away from her, trying to sleep. Of course, sleep didn't come easily, and he lay there thinking for a long time. He thought he heard a sob or two from Sarah, but she eventually calmed down. In the morning, he woke up to find Sarah spooned against him, her body pressed into his back, making his morning erection even stiffer. When she realized Mark was awake, she reached around and placed her hand on his stiff member. "Mark, please forgive me for what I said." "Make love to me," Sarah whispered. Mark knew he was in trouble. If he stayed in that bed, he had never been able to resist Sarah, and he knew she could easily break his resolve. But this time, he held firm. "No, Sarah, I need to get going this morning. There isn't time. Besides, I told you you were cut off, and that's how it's going to be. So don't try that again." Mark got out of bed, showered, and left for work. Sarah said to herself, "Mark, I know I deserve this, but it hurts too much." At work, Mark mentioned to his boss that he was having some personal issues at home. He briefly explained the situation, and his boss told him to take any time off he needed to follow through on his suspicions. His boss also gave him the name of a top-notch electronics distributor who could hook him up with some surveillance equipment. Mark thanked his boss for the concern and help and told him he would be taking off after lunch and would be off for the rest of the week. His boss smiled, knowing exactly what Mark was going to do, and wished him good luck. Mark went to the electronics distributor where his boss had called ahead to make sure he got whatever he needed. Mark didn't think he could handle any visual evidence, but recording conversations was something he could manage. He got 3 Topoline bugs with sufficient battery life to transmit many hours of activity to a receiver within a couple of city blocks. When Mark got home, dinner was on the table, his favorite lasagna with garlic bread and sweet green peas. He thanked Sarah for the wonderful meal and excused himself to watch some television. Sarah cleaned up the kitchen and joined him in the TV room, but was smart enough not to get too close. At bedtime, Sarah headed to their bedroom, and Mark took the opportunity to plant one of the bugs inside their home phone. It would give him a full record of every conversation on that phone. He was nervous about planting a bug in Sarah's cell phone but figured, what the hell, just do it. It only took a few minutes, and he was done. Now he had a source of information from either phone. The tough part was going to be getting a bug into Jason's phone. Mark probably didn't need to hear any of Jason's conversations with Sarah because he already had her phones bugged, but in case she was smart enough to use another phone, he decided to try anyway. Mark remembered that Jason worked with a well-built blonde woman on Wednesday mornings and usually hovered over her like a hawk the whole time she was at the gym. That bastard is probably getting himself all worked up over that blonde and then sneaking off to screw my wife, Mark thought. I need to get a bug on his phone, and that's just the time he'll be able to sneak in there and do it. He'll have his nose so far up her crotch he won't notice anything else for him. An hour Mark went to the gym and saw Jason's phone sitting on his towel, about 10 feet from where Jason was hovering over the blonde. Mark knew it would be risky, but again, he thought, what do I have to lose? He snuck in, slipped the phone into his pocket, and backed out of the gym, heading to the men's room. There, he easily inserted the bug into Jason's phone. The tricky part was going to be getting the phone back on the towel when he returned to the gym. He saw that Jason was wrapping things up with the blonde. Mark knew he wouldn't make it to the towel and back without being spotted. Damn, how am I going to do this? He thought. After a few seconds, he decided to slide the phone across the floor toward the towel and hope it got close enough not to arouse suspicion. It was risky, but he took the chance and slid the phone. It made some noise, but Jason was so engrossed in the blonde that he didn't notice. Luckily, the phone slid hard enough to hit the towel with the leading edge, slipping under. Perfect, Mark thought. There was no way Jason would be suspicious now. So, Mark backed out of the gym and got out of there quickly. At precisely 10:55 a.m., Mark's cell phone rang. It was Sarah. She told him she just wanted to touch base before he went into his meeting. Of course, Mark never told her he was off from work for the rest of the week or that he was skipping the meeting. About 10 minutes later, Mark began monitoring the bug using the receiver from his car. Jason's phone rang, and he picked up quickly. Hi, Sarah, how are you, baby? Do you want to meet at my place like usual? He asked. I thought you were going to be more careful since Mark's suspicious, Sarah replied. I do need to be more careful, Jason. Mark is really suspicious now. I think we're going to have to stop meeting, at least for a while. If he finds out about us, he'll kill you and throw me out. I can't afford that, Jason. I love being with you, but I love Mark and don't want to lose him. Jason grumbled. But how can you give up what we have, Sarah? I know you love it and have enjoyed it all this time. It's why you cut him off in the first place. You could enjoy it more with me. How can you give it up? Mark groaned as he heard Sarah's response. You're right, Jason. The first time we were together, I knew I'd do anything to have you more. For those first 3 months, it wasn't enough. So I did cut Mark off and came to you more. I do love you, but I can't take the risk right now. Maybe in a few weeks, things will settle down, and we can resume our weekly fun. But until then, you'll have to find someone else. Jason responded, Sarah, don't be jealous of my other flings. I've never let them get in the way of our time together, have I? Do you think we can still get together on the Fridays when he golfs? Sarah sighed, I'm not jealous, Jason. I know you need more than I give you, so I haven't cared what you do when I'm not around. Besides, I still sleep with Mark on those special days, and you've never complained. They'll have to think about the Fridays. Maybe that could work. They'll let you know if I think I can pull it off. Mark had heard enough. It made him sick to his stomach, but it also fueled his anger, which had been sleeping with Jason since before he started the diet. She even used the diet as an excuse to cut him off so she could be with Jason more. She had been seeing him every Wednesday, and on the Fridays Mark played golf. She probably had been with him more than 100 times in the last 2.5 years. How could she say she loved Mark when she could so easily cheat on him? Mark even wondered if there had been others, but it didn't matter anymore. Jason alone was enough to end their marriage. Mark knew he would get his revenge on both of them over the next 2 days. He made his plans and contacted a few people to make sure everything was set for the weekend. He continued to monitor the phone taps on Thursday morning. Sarah called her best friend Jane to set up an appointment for Friday morning. It was a very telling conversation. "Jane, I need a killer new hairstyle, something young and sexy." "Why, Sarah? Are you going after a new man?" "No, just trying to keep the one I have. Mark's suspicious about me cheating, and I need to get him thinking with his heart again, instead of with his head. I'm going to buy some hot new lingerie, too, and see if I can totally distract him." "So, what are you going to do about Jason? You can't seriously give up that great time you've been telling me about." "Well, I might not give it up completely, but I will for a while anyway, and then maybe not as often." They both laughed, and the rest of their conversation was inconsequential. Mark, of course, was devastated by what he heard, but by this time, his anger was driving him, and the hurt was buried deep inside. Jason called Sarah on Friday when she hadn't called him. "Well, babe, you still want to hold off for a while? Or do you want a taste of me?" Jason replied, "I want it badly, but I just can't take the risk of getting together with you for a while. Please be patient, and I promise we'll get back together as soon as Mark lets this go." With every conversation, Mark's heart broke more. He couldn't comprehend how there could be any love left in their relationship. It was all selfishness on Sarah's part, no concern for him, and certainly no respect. He wondered where things had gone wrong. But now his plans were in place, and he would get his revenge. Saturday after lunch, the doorbell rang, and Sarah went to answer it. A beautiful woman stood there, wearing a cover-up outfit and carrying a small bag. "Hi, Sarah and Amy. A friend of Mark's mentioned that it would be okay for me to spend a little time by your pool today. I hope I'm not inconveniencing you, but I really need to work on my tan." Sarah was at a loss for words but said, "Sure, come on in," and showed her to the pool. Amy noticed that Sarah wasn't smiling, and a slight smile slipped onto her own face. A short time later, 2 more women, Linda and Rebecca, rang the doorbell together. Linda told Sarah that she had worked with Mark for a few years, and Rebecca mentioned that she had waited on them as a couple at Riverdale's. They both said that Mark had invited them to use the pool for the afternoon. Both women were very attractive, and Sarah began to wonder what was going on. She felt a chill run through her as she considered the possibilities. All 3 women staked out lung chairs and started applying suntan lotion. They quickly agreed to help each other so they wouldn't miss any spots. Once they were well oiled, they lay on the lounges, soaking up the sun. After a short time, they decided an all-over tan would be better and untied their bikini tops, dropping them on the towels beside their chairs. Sarah was furious and wanted to tell them to leave, but since Mark had invited them, she knew she had to tread lightly. She was already on thin ice with him. At 3:30 p.m., Amy walked over to Sarah and sat down across from her. "Sarah, I have to tell you something. I'm a bartender at Riverdale's, and when you gave Mark that ultimatum, he came in for a few beers that night and told me everything that's been going on with you too." Sarah looked startled, but Amy continued, "I think you made a big mistake, Sarah. Mark is suspicious of you now and has been digging to find out exactly what's happened. I think it's only fair to warn you that Mark told Linda, Rebecca, and me that if he discovers you've cheated on him in the past or do so in the future, he's going to sleep with each of us for every time you cheated." Sarah's mouth dropped open, and she started to say something, but Amy cut her off. "He also told us that if you lie to him, he'll sleep with one of us each time you lie. We all think Mark is quite the catch and would love to have him." Amy knew that Mark was going to be with her because she already knew Sarah had cheated many times and she knew with whom. She also knew Sarah would lie, hoping to keep her infidelity a secret, so Mark was going to be a busy man. Linda walked over and sat down next to Amy. "I've known Mark for several years and always thought he was handsome and sweet. I know he gained a lot of weight, but underneath, He was still the sweet guy he always was, and I had a huge crush on him. I still do, but now there's even more. He's become a hunk since losing all that weight. I know you two are having trouble. I just want you to know that I never made a move on him before, but now I'm going to. He can have me anytime he wants. Sarah, of course, wasn't going to be left out. I've had my eye on you two for a couple of years, and I always noticed how much he loved you. I saw how he doted on you, and was always kind and considerate. Many times, I thought how lucky you were to have such a man, and I wished I could be so lucky. In fact, I fantasized that it was me with Mark. He lost 15 pounds to make you happy and became a hunk in the process, and you did this to him. I know I would do almost anything to have a man like him in my life, so be prepared. Moments later, at precisely 4 p.m., as Mark had planned with the 3 women beforehand, he walked out through the patio doors onto the pool deck. He smiled as he saw the 4 women there. "Hi, Sarah. I see you've met my 3 friends, and I also see they've been working on their tans. I have to say this is the first time I've seen any of these beautiful bodies, and I'm pleasantly surprised. Ladies, you're going to give me a hard time. Sarah, how come you're not topless? Don't you want to compete for my attention?" Sarah was terribly upset by the events of the afternoon, but realized she had better play along. She reluctantly untied her top and let it fall. Mark said, "Sarah, I have a couple of questions for you, and it's imperative that you answer them honestly. At any time during our marriage, have you cheated on me?" Sarah answered, "No, never." Mark continued, "Sarah, are you telling me that you've never cheated on me with Jason from the gym?" Sarah again answered, "No, Mark, I've never cheated on you with Jason or anyone else. Where did you get that idea?" Mark pressed on, "So, Sarah, you're telling me you never cheated on me with Jason almost every Wednesday for more than 2 years, and on the Friday afternoons I played golf with my brother and our friends." Sarah was shocked that Mark knew so much about her affair with Jason, but knew her only hope was to stick to her story and hope he didn't have real evidence. "So," she replied, "No, Mark, I don't know what you're talking about." Meanwhile, Amy, Linda, and Rebecca sat there with huge grins on their faces, growing brighter with every answer Sarah gave. They knew exactly what was about to happen. Mark said, "Well, Sarah, it seems you're not only a cheater but also a liar. You know you've been with Jason almost every Wednesday at 11 a.m., and I know it too. I got a copy of your phone logs from both the landline and your cell phone. I saw every call you made to me at 10:55 a.m., immediately followed by a call to Jason's cell phone at 11 a.m. I know it was Jason's phone because I had Amy call the number, and she verified that it was him. I have no pictures of you two together because I didn't want to see that for the rest of my life. But Sarah, I know in my heart that a call to him every week wasn't innocent. So, I don't need pictures. You're the only one who knows what happened, but I'm convinced regardless." Sarah was in shock. It finally hit her hard that Mark knew everything, and she was in for a lot of hard times in their relationship. She started to say something, but Mark stopped her. "Sarah, there's not much more to say, and nothing that could convince me you haven't been cheating on me. You know how much I love you, but right now, my hurt, disgust, and anger are so much stronger than my love for you. I brought these 3 lovely ladies here today, so you could see them in all their glory. I want to tell you a bit about each one of them too. Sally, she's been an associate of mine at work for several years. She's such a beautiful woman and as sweet as they come. We've worked well together, and I've known for a long time that she had a crush on me. As I got in better shape, I noticed that she seemed to feel more than just a crush. I never acted on it because I was married and loved my wife dearly." Sally smiled, knowing she and Mark had always had a good working relationship and a mutual respect. "Linda, I've known her for a much shorter time, as she told you. We only met when you and I would go to Riverdale together, and she would wait on us. I could tell she enjoyed seeing us together, but I never knew she fantasized about being with me instead of you. She's a lovely woman, and I am flattered that she thinks so highly of me. And I have to say, doesn't she have the most perfect breasts you've ever seen? I'm definitely going to enjoy spending time with her." Sarah's face turned red with embarrassment and anger, but she remained silent. "I've known Amy for the least amount of time. I've seen her at Riverdale, but we never really talked until you dropped that bomb on me. Amy was a classic bartender, listening to my tale of woe. But there was more. I could see the compassion in her eyes, the pain on her face as I shared my hurt, and the anger that a woman could do what you did to the man who loved her. In a very short time, I felt a connection with Amy, and she helped me find out things I couldn't have discovered on my own. By this time, Sarah was on the verge of a total breakdown. Tears leaked from her eyes, and her chest heaved with exaggerated breathing. She had so much she wanted to tell Mark, but the words wouldn't come. I must say I'm really going to enjoy spending time with these three beautiful women. I know they're all interested in me and want to be with me. I'm in for one hell of a ride. Don't you think, Sarah? But Sarah, I promise you that I would not be unfaithful in our marriage. How am I going to be with these amazing women if I'm still married to you? I can't break my promise. I'm not built that way. So, the only way is to not be married to you anymore. Amy reached into her bag and pulled out divorce papers. Sarah, I'm a bartender at night, but I also have a day job. I'm a process server. You've been served, and by the way, this is the first time I've ever served someone while topless, she giggled. Sarah couldn't hold on to her emotions anymore and burst into tears. Oh, Mark, please don't do this. I'm so sorry. They'll do anything to make it up to you. I love you, and I want to be with only you. Sarah, Mark said, I'm having a hard time believing you really love me, given what you've been doing for over 2 years. This wasn't just a couple of times. Sarah hit was more than 100 times with Jason, and I'm not sure if there were others, but it doesn't matter. The court hearing is scheduled for next Friday, and after we're legally separated, I'm going to start seeing these women. Maybe after a while, I'll be so engrossed in enjoying their company that I'll be able to forgive you. Maybe you'll even understand what you got out of your fare. Maybe a lasting relationship will develop with one of these women, and it'll find the love and support I thought I had with you. If that happens, maybe I'll be able to stop loving you and eventually forget you. I hope so, Sarah. Mark told the women it was time to leave, and that he would call each of them. He went into the house to pack a few things to hold him over while he stayed at a hotel until Friday, when either he or Sarah would officially move out. Unable to do anything coherent, Sarah just sat by the pool, crying softly. Mark walked out of the patio doors, set his suitcases down, and then walked over to Sarah. She didn't know what more he could say, but it became clear in an instant. Sarah, remember what I told you would happen to your lover? Well, it just so happens that yesterday, when you apparently canceled on Jason, he decided to go after the big busted blonde he works with every Wednesday morning. Yes, she was his wore-up girl for you, Sarah. It's what got him hot before you two got together. He always had his nose so far up her crotch that by the time he got to you, he was really ready. I can only imagine how Amy, Linda, and Rebecca will get me worked up. I hope it makes me a sexual dynamo for them. And by the way, that blonde was Gina Marone, the wife of Vito Marone. It seems Vito didn't appreciate Jason messing around with his wife, and he and a couple of his guys gave Jason a good beating. I think his face is still a mess, has a few teeth left, but not many, and some of his ribs are broken too. Vito was so grateful that I tipped him off that he let me be the one to kick Jason where it counts. I doubt he'll be producing any more hot shots. In fact, I'd be surprised if he ever has sex again. And don't worry, SEL will deny any involvement in what happened to Jason, of course. Friday was my golf day, and my brother and friends will be the perfect alibi. Have a great life, Sarah. He'll see you in court next Friday. Sarah was left crying that day. She was all alone. Within the next 2 hours, her bags were packed, and she was sent to her mother's. It took 7 months to finalize the divorce. Sarah was devastated and fell into a deep depression, while Mark, well, he never did what he said he would with the other women. He never intended to. Instead, he got himself 2 golden retrievers and found unconditional love in the end.